Hi everyone, this video will show you how to use Google Sheets to make a graph out of the data that you have. So whenever you're in Drive, you want to go to New and click on Google Sheets. Once you do, it'll open up a new Google Sheet, and the first thing you want to do is rename your sheet from Untitled to the appropriate title for whatever you're graphing so that you can find it when you need it. So the first thing you want to do is you want to go look at your data. In this case, our data was on a PDF. And the data was already laid out for you into the data table. The only thing missing was the average. And so you were to calculate the averages and then make your graphs. Whenever you use Google Sheets to make a graph, you want to set up the sheet the exact same way. Remember, when you're making a graph, you're only going to graph the first column and the last column, which is generally the average column. You don't graph all the trials. So generally it's always the first and last column. So in this case for homework data table number 1, it's brand of battery and then average time the light lasted. So on my graph, I'd set that up the same way in my sheet. I would just say battery and time light lasted. Now what I did is I already went ahead and I duplicated the data in the sheet just to show you guys a few extra things, but you wouldn't necessarily have to set up the whole thing. Now the reason I did this is because I'm showing you if you are struggling calculating average or you want to double check, Sheets will calculate the average for you. So here I've duplicated the table, and if I wanted the average of these numbers right here, I can go up to the functions and I can choose average, and it will ask where do I want to get the average from, and so I just need to select these 4 cells and I press the enter key and it gives me the average. And if I want to continue that for the rest of the cells, I can click on the cell and then the little plus arrow shows up in the corner there, and I'm just going to drag this down to the other 4 and it will give me the average for the rest of the numbers. Same thing down here. This is data table number 2, which I copied straight from our PDF. And if I wanted to get the average down here, I would do the same thing. I'd go up to my functions and I'd say I need the average, and it asks where I want the average from, so I select the cells. I press enter. Obviously the average of 0 is 0, but if I pull that down to get the average of the other cells, it'd work that out for me. All right, now that I have my first and last column, I'm just going to duplicate that to the other page. So I'm just going to copy it over. You would normally just start typing this in. So here I would just start typing in, Energizer, Duracell, Rayovac. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and paste it in just to save time. There we go. And then I'm going to go to time light lasted, and I'm just going to go ahead and get those averages from right here. I'm going to copy that and just move it over to the sheet. Again, I would just normally be typing these numbers in. Oh, I want to, sorry. Okay. And so I paste the numbers in there. Now, I would do the same thing for data table number 2, which is amount of calcium chloride and change in temperature. So I would just start typing, calcium chloride, change in temperature. And I can change these titles later to exactly what I need. So right now I'm just kind of abbreviating. And so I would just go to what I already kind of typed in, and I'm just going to copy this over. And when I'm pasting in the value, since I already calculated the average on a different page, it's kind of a special paste. I would have to go to Edit, Paste Special, Paste Values Only. So it pastes just the values, because otherwise it'll try to paste the formula, and it doesn't know where to calculate the average from on this page. So now that I have my data, it makes no difference that some cells are highlighted and some cells are not. When I'm ready to make the graph, I want to make the graph for this first set of data right here. Homework data table number 1, I have the first and last column. First and last column. I select all of that and only the stuff I want to graph, and I press the graph button or insert chart. And I know because this one is words and numbers, I'm going to need a bar graph. And by default, Sheets generally loads bar graphs first. The chart editor loads up on the right, and it shows you a preview of what your chart's going to look like. And it looks pretty good, except you'll notice that I need to kind of fix the labels for the X and Y axis, and I need to make sure my title is correct. It also puts in a legend for me, which you may or may not want to have. So over here on the chart editor, this is where it allows me to change the chart type, which I don't need to do because it's already a bar graph. So I can go to customize, and I can mess with any of this that I want. You can change how it looks, the colors, all that. But I'm really just concerned with the chart title, which would be this column right here. So again, I'm under customize, chart and axis titles. It says, what do you want to change? I want to change the chart title. We know that it should be the effect of, and it's going to be my IV, which is at the bottom, which was type of battery. The effect of type of battery on, and my dependent variable, which is on the left-hand side, time light lasted. Now I can also change the X and Y axis by clicking the drop-down arrow right here and saying change horizontal axis, horizontal being the X axis, and I'm going to change it from just battery to type of battery, because it will put whatever you typed in the sheet. So see, I just typed battery right there, so that's why I put battery. So I'm just changing it here. And then I'm going to change the vertical axis from time light lasted, which is fine. It's just missing its unit, which was in minutes. So I remember I looked back here, time light lasted in minutes. So I'm changing in parentheses, I'm putting minutes, and you can see that all updates over there. And then this legend here, I really don't need that legend. So I can go right here to legend, and I can tell it none, because I only have one set. If I had multiple sets of data, then I'd maybe want that. And you can see there's the chart, all nice and neat for me. The only thing that's kind of different on this bar graph is that it starts at 40 and it makes like Everlast look like it didn't last any time at all, when in reality it lasted 40 minutes. So I could also, if I wanted to, if that really bugged me, I could go over here and change that in the customize section. By going to the vertical axis, this is the vertical axis, and making the minimum value 0 if I wanted to. There we go. And so once I made the minimum value 0, it made the Everlast battery actually show 40 minutes, and now it kind of looks a little bit better instead of looking like the Everlast battery was so short. All right, so this chart is now done. I've completed my first graph. It's very simple. These three little dots in the graph, if I click on them, I can move this to its own sheet. And it makes it much, much bigger. And notice it'll label it chart 1 down here. You can click this drop-down arrow and rename it if you needed to. This would be my bar graph. And I can go back to my sheet, and I can now do the second graph, which should be a line graph. So I select all the data, and I go to Insert Chart. And by default, it gives me a bar graph, which is not what I want. I want a line graph. So I would go over here to chart type, and notice it says column, and I'm going to switch that to line. And I'm going to go to customize, and I'm going to change the axis and titles. And so the title, again, need to change that to the effect of, and this was the effect of amount of calcium chloride on change in water temperature. Again, I'm getting my title from the data right here. Here is the amount of calcium chloride, which is my independent variable, and the change in water temperature, which is my dependent variable. So the effect of the IV on the dV. I'm going to change the horizontal axis. Actually, just change the vertical axis. That should be the title, not the axis. There you go. There you go. That should change the title. The effect of amount of calcium chloride and change in water temperature. Now I'm going to go to my horizontal axis, and it just says calcium chloride. I'm just going to simply change that to amount of calcium chloride, and that should be in grams. So it needs a unit in parentheses of grams. I'm going to change my vertical axis, where it currently has nothing written, to water temperature, or actually change in water temperature. And the units for that was degrees Celsius, but there's no degree button, so I'm just going to put C. Again, there is a legend showing that this blue line means change in temperature. I don't necessarily need that, so I can go to legend, and I can say none. And now I have this nice graph that's made for me, nice and neat. I can click on it again and say move to own sheet. It'll put it in its own sheet, and I can rename it. Instead of calling it chart 2, I can rename it to line graph. And I now have both my graphs made from my data. I also learned how to, if I wanted to, calculate the average very easily, having sheets do it for me. Of course, you would have to duplicate the data table if you wanted to do that. But just to normally do the graph, you just need the first and last column, select it all, and make your chart. And then once you've made your chart, if you're actually on the page where you insert it to its own sheet, you can go right up here to Save Image, and you can click on Save Image, and you notice this will download it to your Chromebook for you. And that way, when you go to Classroom to turn it in, and you're in Classroom view, and this is a teacher view, but when you're in student view, and you go to turn it in, you can insert from your drive, or you can attach a file, you can attach a file from your computer. And I just downloaded that image of the graph. It'll pop up here. There it is right there. And I can upload that to turn it in. See, there it is. And so it turned it in. And then you would turn it in, and I, as your teacher, would be able to see it. So that is how you make a graph. Please watch this video as many times as you need, as I did tend to go fast, so that you know how to make both a bar and line graph from your data in Google Sheets.